Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to wire wrap one of the pendants that, if you're a patron, you may get in one of my monthly craft crates that I send out. So in your craft crate you'll have some 20 gauge wire from parawire.com. It's non-tarnish, it's hypoallergenic, it won't turn your skin green, super durable stuff. And at least all the colors that I've sent to y'all, I have touched every single one and there is no enamel rub off on your fingers. Some folks were sending me messages being like, their teal did that on one of the spools and stuff, so it's like, I don't know, but in my experience, I've always had a really good time with the Parawire. And this is actually a handmade polymer clay cabochon that I made specifically for my patrons. So let's get started. So this length of wire is about maybe 2 feet long. You will have much more than that in your package, but I wanted to show you guys that you can get a couple of projects out of that little sample spool that I send y'all. And I'm going to come through, and this is actually going to be loosely following along with one of my much earlier tutorials, but I'm going to come to the center of my wire, and using some flat nose or whatever you have, pliers, I'm going to do a little bend, and that's a 90-degree sharp bend like that. Let me zoom in some for y'all. Boop, boop. That's not the camera, that's me beeping, sorry. I guess I'll stop beeping. But, and I want to come in about 1 centimeter from each end. So I'm going to do my second bend right there. And I'm going to do it in the opposite direction, like this, just like that. So there we are. And now I'm going to firmly press this against the back of my cabochon, and I'm going to wrap around the top here and then smush against the back, just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, or the other end rather. And at this point, I'm actually going to slide my cab out of our wrapping. And then I'm going to pinch in kind of right there to help it bend where I want it to bend. This is not an exact science. This is a freeform wire wrapping. And so I've done a full rotation around this kind of spine wire. I don't know why I always think about my pendants as little humans. And so I'm going to be repeating that same motion on this side. And if you don't want to use your fingernails, you can just get in there with your flat nose pliers and see how it's lined up with the edge there. I'm going to come out just 1 millimeter, and that leaves me some room to be able to fit the nose of my pliers in. And then I'm just going to bend. You'll notice I used my finger on the back side to give it some resistance. That helps, I feel like that helps it to happen, have the bend happen where I want it to happen. And now I'm going to continue bending just around. And the more you do this, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it, and the more you'll start to, I hesitate to say control the wire, because sometimes it's not a matter of controlling as being able to feel how the wire is happening and how to like adapt. It's more of, it really is more of adapting to how the wire is happening than being like, no, this is, you know, what I want to happen. It's my little motto with wire wrapping is, this is not what I planned, but this is what's happening. So here I've just wrapped it around, kind of smushed it back into place. There's still quite a bit of wiggle room, like there's too much wiggle, I feel like, right now. So what I'm going to do, again with our flat nose pliers, is come in and I'm gripping the wire flush against the cab quite securely. I don't want to risk my pliers slipping off, and I'm using these 2 fingers up here and these 2 fingers down here to kind of grip the 4 corners of my pendant. And you could turn this way, or you could turn away from you, or you could turn towards you. It doesn't really matter, but I'm just cinching it and then twisting down. So that little kink there made it much tighter here on the front, and now you can feel, well, I can feel there is no wiggle there, and that makes me a lot more confident in this holding on to this stone. So, and you can see here, I have a little kink in my wire. So I'm going to go grab my nylon gel pliers and then I'll be right back. So these are probably my favorite tool in ever. Like, they are nylon gel pliers. It's like plastic cutting board material that's secured in there, but the best thing about it is you can take something that has a little kink in it and just run your wire through it, and it is good as new. Now you'll be able to feel it heats the wire up a little bit, so between the heating and the pressure on it, this will act to work harden your work. So this wire's, the more you do that, the stiffer it will become and the more brittle it will become. And what I mean by that is that if I did it a whole bunch and then tried to do a sharp bend in it, it would be much more likely to break. And so now I'm going to come through and try to figure out what we're going to, like, what do we do from here? Well, our next step is, do you want to make it into a brooch? Do you want it to be a pendant? You know, we could go a lot of different ways with this. So I'm actually going to make it to where it will be a pendant that would hang from each shoulder, like one loop there and one loop there. And so to achieve that, we could come in with some round nose pliers, or we could use a mandrel, or we could just eyeball it. But I'm going to come about halfway up the tip of my pliers and then wrap around and try to stay in frame. And then to keep the size of that loop established, I'm just going to wrap around twice. And that way, even when pressure is put on the wire, that loop will still maintain its size. Like, it won't like cinch down the way that would if I just did like a loose loop, because now we're going to come right across. I'm actually going to do a whip stitch for those of y'all who sew, but I'm just coming around, looping through this wire here and tightening down. I don't want to bulk up the back too much because that is the area that's going to be rubbing on your skin. And some folks can be quite sensitive. And so if it starts getting a little bulky, I'll just sit it on my work surface and press. I make sure to not press on either end, but they're directly over it. That way, if you have a softer stone, you don't risk cracking it. But that makes it much flatter. And now I'm going to repeat that same loop shape on this side. So again, coming halfway up the nose of my pliers. I'm actually going to change, there we go. And then doing that, whoop, one rotation. I'm actually going to change hands. This is happening a little looser than I wanted it to, but that's okay. And then a second. There we go. Yeah, that one came out kind of jumbled, see? So what do we do when it gets jumbly like that? I'm going to continue holding that ring in my nylon jaw pliers, that, well, I say ring with that little loop that we made, and then I'm just going to tighten that down a little bit more. And I think that looks much tidier. So now we have our connection points where we could attach this to a chain. And so now everything from here, I could trim off the wire and just use my bent nose pliers to train them down, or we could go through and make it super fancy. So I think we're going to make it super fancy. So this wire coming off the side, and you can see we still have quite a bit of wire left over, so it doesn't take a whole lot to just initially stabilize that stone. So I'm bringing this one around, and I want to just double up on the wires that are already there. So I've wrapped around onto the back. And I'm going to do that same thing up here at the top. I don't know if I want it, yeah, I want it on the top side. There we go. And now with this one, I'm actually going to trim from the fold of my finger to the tip, so almost an inch, maybe a little over. And I'm going to use my round nose pliers to grab as close to the tip of the pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can. And then using my finger to kind of keep it flat, because otherwise sometimes it'll want to get a little three-dimensional on you, and that's not what I'm going for. And just continually spin it down. That way we start getting a little spiral. And then I'm going to grab my nylon jaw pliers, and we can actually move this away from the stone a little bit. That way our pliers have room to get in there. And I'm really squeezing these pliers to try to flatten that down a bit, work hard in it so it holds its shape. And then I'm just going to smush it with my thumb, and now we have a really cute little spiral just up there at the top. And so now with this guy coming around, I'm actually going to insert my thumbnail just a little bit. I don't want to risk scratching the surface of my stone. I just want to make sure there's enough room that I can insert this. I'm going to put a little bit of a bend, that way it naturally comes away from the stone. Yeah. That way I can just thread it through like that. And this will act to stabilize it a little bit more than what it might have been. And I'm just cinching down with my thumb, trying to not warp the wire too much. And see how we got a little curly Q started there. And now I'm just going to continue that shape around. Down to the other side. And I'm using my thumbnail to apply pressure from this side and this finger to pull down towards me. And I'm going to follow maybe 2 inches around, just eyeballing it, and snip off that excess. Save all your little scrap pieces, because these are great for threading a bead onto and making little links. So we could make little links to come off of the shoulders here and make this into a necklace. But I want to bring this one, and that's a little too far off the side for me, so I'm actually going to take this and just press it on the table and scooch it around just onto the front. And that actually did me the favor of opening up that wire down here, because I'm going to feed up through there. Now this is a little longer than I wanted it to be, so I'm going to trim it down. And again, grabbing as close to the tip and as close to the tip of the wire as I can. And I'm just spiraling it in. Just like that. And there we are. It's a little capuchon. That's the front. And that's the back. Also, if you feel the need, how this is sticking out kind of weird, I can come in with your round nose pliers or your flat nose, and again, just cinch it down. And then if you're going to press, be sure to press directly opposite the side of the stone. That way there's no pressure that might crack it or break it. But there we are. Also, I wanted to include a little bonus tip for you guys. The 20 gauge wire that we have left over, I'm going to show y'all how we can make some different links out of it to make our own chain to come off of the our pendant here. Now, the 20 gauge is a little thin, I think, for doing just loosely. I can show you one option. If this were 18 gauge, I would recommend this. But again, grabbing it about halfway down the tip of my pliers, and I'm just coming around like that. And then I'm going to grab it on the other side and come around like that. And what we're doing here is just making a little figure 8, and then I can take it and snip very close. Just like that. Snip. And then I would come through with my nylon jaw pliers and smush the heck out of it. Now smushing will help it to harden up a little bit, but I still wouldn't trust it with maybe a particularly heavy pendant. Now this one's quite light, so this might work, but if you're going to do this, you'll want to hammer it or at least squish it a bit. And then we can take our pliers and open one side of the loop, then hook it on, and then go in and try to get that closure just as tight and close as we can. And so there's one option. I'm going to make another one for the other side because you can do a lot of things and get away with it if you keep it symmetrical. So there's one side. And then I'm going to wrap around and give us the other side. And snip. And I'm going to come in with our nylon jaw pliers again and smoosh. There we go. And now I'm going to open up that loop and I'm going to hook it onto the pendant. And then I'm going to close it up again. So again, you'll want to be really careful if you have little ones who might be pulling on your necklace, or if this is going to be very long. It would be more like I would want to use an 18 gauge for that, but that's just me. Now here we have, it looks like about 2.5 inches of wire left. This would be perfect for if we had like a little seed bead or something, but let's presume that we don't have anything else to work with. You could put a little bead in the center and then do this on either end, but I'm going to come in about 1 inch from the end. Like, actually, I only want one pliers width in the middle. That's going to make it a lot easier to make these symmetrical. So from our other end of scrap, I'm going to cut off the same length, 2.5 inches. I'm going to come to the middle, and I'm going to bend, and I'm going to bend. That way we have, it's not quite a Z, but like a little stair step. And now off of this end, I'm going to grab it with my pliers and start coming around. Then off of this end, I'm going to grab it with my pliers. Again, coming almost halfway up the nose. It just gives me a way to make my loops consistent. And now still holding it loosely but firmly. I don't want to squeeze so tight that it nicks or indents the wire. And then I'm going to come around. I actually prefer my bent nose for this. And start twisting this around. 1, 2, and there's 3 rotations. Let me zoom in a bit for you so you can see what we're doing. And so I've come in 3 rotations on this side, so I'm just going to flip it around, and we're going to do 3 rotations on this side. There's 1, and there's 2. And it's starting to warp a little bit on us, but that's alright. So now I've removed my pliers, and it really helps to have the pliers in there because otherwise it starts twisting everything around. There we go. And you could do this however, if you wanted it a little messy, if you wanted it very, very tight and even and symmetrical, like use your artistic discretion to have this be exactly how you want it to be. And now I've just about filled up all the space that was there in between the loop. And so I'm going to come in and try my best to keep this from becoming just like barbed wire, because that's kind of how it looks right now. I'm just going to snip. And you can see these little ends are just crazy kinds of loose. So I'm going to grab it and just smush them down with the tips of my pliers. Now this is another great opportunity to come in and just smush and just smush. Now the downside to a link like this is I can't open either end, so that's where having a link like this in between them really comes in handy. And I'll tell y'all what, nothing will give you practice in a technique like making an entire chain out of those. So, and you could make them longer or shorter or just however you like. You could also, if I did it half the width of a plier tip, I could have done the first one and then had the second one wrap around it and have it be more barrel looking, like much thicker, and it would look more like a wrapped bead. So that's that. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me for this tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful to you. If you guys have any questions, comments, or ideas, or requests for future tutorials, please leave them down below in the comment area. All of the materials for this are included in my $20 and up Patreon craft crates, but I will also have links to the tools and materials listed down below in the video description. If you follow along with this tutorial and you would like to share pictures of what you've made, you can tag me on Instagram, you can share it on my Facebook wall. Again, all the links for all that stuff are down below. But I will see y'all around, and happy crafting. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!